Leslie Marshall is syndicated radio talk show host and a Fox News contributor. Steve Hilton is founder and CEO of CrowdPack and a former strategy director for UK Prime Minister David Cameron. Welcome to both of you. I think one of the big issues here is, good morning, is understanding what the actual policy will be. Because the administration so far that's coming into leadership here has said that what they're first going to do is lock down the border, and then comes finding people who are criminals, who have committed crimes in this country or have been kicked out and come back, as we saw in the Kate Steinle case, and make sure that they're gone before any sort of removal of other people would happen. Is that your understanding, Steve?
I think that's exactly right. I think that the focus of the policy is on exactly what was set out in the campaign and seems perfectly reasonable. And the core principles of that a country should be able to control its borders, decides who comes here, make sure that people who've broken the law aren't allowed to stay here. I don't think there's anything unreasonable about any of that. And the thing I'd really say about the mayors around the country who are saying they're going to defy anything that might happen is this. Look, I'm a real believer in local government, in decentralization. I think that in many ways our government is too centralized. But there are certain policies that just have to be carried out at a national level. And immigration is one of them. You just can't have a patchwork of different immigration policies around the country. It doesn't make sense.
I just want to play this exchange with Tucker Carlson last night. He spoke with one of the Rutgers students on his show, and here's what happened. Watch.
Do you think people have a right to lock their doors? Or do you think they have an obligation to let anyone in who chooses to come? Well, you're saying that the United States has no right to prevent people who want to come here from coming here. And I'm just asking you, does the same apply to us as individuals? Do you have a right to keep people out who want to share your apartment with you?
I think that's not really a direct analogy. That obviously a nation state, a sovereign nation state, is very different from an individual.
He's trying to make the point that, every nation has to have a border. And I think when you look at it, in that way, Leslie, most people accept that.
Well, first of all, there's a very big difference between a border, a well-patrolled border, and a walled-off border, which it won't be. I mean, I was listening to interviews today. They're talking about 100 to 200 miles of possible additional fencing, and we know the fencing just a couple of hours south of where I'm sitting is not necessarily working. The drug cartels have miles and miles of tunnels underground, and we saw people go over the Berlin Wall, for crying out loud. So I understand the analogy. I love Tucker, and I do lock my doors, but I do understand not just the anger, but the fear among these students. I live in a city where I live in a state where we have the largest Latino population, the largest undocumented population, the largest Muslim population, and a lot of these kids are not just exercising their First Amendment right, but they're fearful of what the future holds based on some of the rhetoric and some of the policies they fear are coming in the next 4 years.
Do you think they're reasonable to assume that they're going to be kicked out of their homes?
Here in Southern California, we have to remember in some of the Latino community, there are mixes of undocumented and legalized born here citizens at one family table on a nightly basis. So there are some kids in school that fear that daddy will be deported even though mommy's a citizen and they were born here, that their grandparents will be deported, that their families will be torn apart. They're also concerned about the racism. We've seen a lot of hateful attacks, unfortunately, since the election.
But I think
a lot of people are waiting.
But there needs to be a focus on exactly, what the laws are in the country that exist. And there's so many people who come here, immigrants, first-generation immigrants who come here legally, who, sort of spend money they don't have to, get through the process, who leave and come back, according to the rules. And so why would it be that they have to be subject to a different set of rules than people who run across the border, Steve?
I don't think they should. And I think that the other point we've got to bear in mind here is that because of what I consider to be the essential reasonableness of the actual policies, what you're seeing in the response, which I agree with Leslie, it is very sincerely felt. I don't think we should dismiss it as being insincere. But the trouble is, it's not a response to the actual policies. It's actually a response to the propaganda that was created during the campaign, where those on the left built up Trump to be such a cartoonish monster that people now believe these things, which don't really bear any relation to the policy proposals he was making in the campaign or is making now.
Yeah, I mean, I think the actions will speak the loudest. loudest, and it is incumbent upon the new administration to follow through with the policy that they put down and see it through. But I think that everybody, sort of needs to take a deep breath and see how that plays out. Thank you very much, both of you, for being here today. Good to see you.